Hi everyone, welcome to another reading of this book, New York Art Deco, A Guide to Gotham's Jazz Age Architecture by Anthony W. Robbins. Today's reading is dedicated to a good friend of mine, Sierra. She's a lovely individual, beautiful inside and out, and she's had a fucking rough time the last few months, and I hope you're doing well, Sierra. And I'm so proud of you, and I'm sending you a huge hug and lots of love. So many people love and care for you, and I hope this reading gives you some comfort. We will take off from the last place, which was this part here, filtering out and down across the metropolis. Okay, so get comfy and I am going to start reading. Okay, filtering out and down across the metropolis. The Depression put an end to the building of skyscrapers. The last one opened in 1932, but the great towers had already transformed the skyline, and their impact was felt across the metropolis. Art Deco, firmly launched, continued into the 1930s and 1940s in building types of all kinds throughout the 5 boroughs. Among the first to show the influence of the skyscraper style were Manhattan apartment buildings. Late 19th century apartment houses, accepted by New York's well-to-do only reluctantly, had early on turned to the glories of Europe for respectable architectural models. The Dakota on West 72nd Street, built in the 1880s, suggested a grand German Renaissance palace, fit for, if not a German prince, then several hundred fortunate American families. 5 years later, the designers of the majestic apartments at 8.3, let me show you guys what that looks like. So this is the building that they are referring to. Directly across the street, abandoned the European palaces of centuries past in favor of the American skyscrapers of the new century to come, creating one of the 3 strikingly vertical twin-towered Art Deco apartment skyscrapers prominently silhouetted in the residential skyline of Central Park West. At the same time, and in the same way, the new Waldorf Astoria, successor to the old Victorian pile that once occupied the site of the Empire State Building, was brought up to date as a twin-towered Art Deco skyscraper hotel on Park Avenue. More unexpected perhaps was the creation of a residential skyline, not of 30-story apartment towers in Manhattan, but of 6-story elevator apartment houses in Brooklyn and the Bronx. Dozens of architects, many of them immigrants, whose training ranged from sophisticated to rudimentary, brought the color and vitality of midtown skyscrapers to the Grand Concourse, Ocean Avenue, and the side streets of Brighton Beach, where Brooklyn meets the Atlantic Ocean. How did the high-class skyscraper style make its way to the middle-class precincts of the outer boroughs? Marvin Fine, of the firm of Horace Ginsberg and Associates, watched both the Daily News and Chrysler Buildings rise in 1930 from the ringside seat of his East 42nd Street office. He later recalled telling his boss that those red and white brick spandrels on the Daily News would make a terrific trademark for the new apartment blocks on the Grand Concourse. By the 1930s, builders and architects throughout the city had caught on to the new style. Sedate apartment stores expanded into raffish modern additions as at Bloomingdale's. 7.1. Let's see Bloomingdale's at the time. .1. Here's Bloomingdale's. There you see. in Manhattan, or commissioned brand new deco buildings like J. Kurtz and Sons and 14.8 in Jamaica, Queens. Let's see, 14.8. So that's that building there. The exotic eclecticism of Nouveau palaces gave way to an exotic modernism, whether in small Depression-era neighborhood houses like the Lane, 15.5. See the Lane. I want to see the Lane. It's all the way in the back. Ooh, interesting. In New Dorp, Staten Island, on the grand fantasy of Radio City Music Hall in the heart of Midtown Manhattan, parking garages and filling stations, banks, restaurants, nightclubs, airport terminals, even churches found their way to the style of the modern metropolis. Kind of looks like the Jetsons, doesn't it? The fall and rise of Art Deco. Economics undoubtedly played a part in the appeal of the Art Deco style. In hard times, what could be more attractive than a simple and affordable design, in which a change in color or geometric pattern in the brickwork could make a cheap building seem stylish and up-to-date? Perhaps, inevitably, the various modernisms of Art Deco became associated with the Great Depression in the minds of the people who lived through it. By the 1960s, shortly before its name was coined, Art Deco had fallen into almost total disrepute, a depressing relic of the past, condemned as misinformed modernism, whose practitioners had been unable to comprehend the austere, pristine purity of the international style, the true modern. Over the past 4 decades, as parts of the general reprisal of all historic architecture, Art Deco has been rediscovered, reconsidered, and re-embraced. It appeals to us as stylish and romantic. Perhaps we see it wistfully as the modern road not taken, and wish it could take the place of the dreary banality that passed for modern in the decades following World War II. We have, in short, adopted it as a usable modern past. The rediscovery of Art Deco may have seemed a passing fad at times. Witness a New Yorker cartoon captioned, "Do you realize we are living through the second time people got tired of Art Deco?" Deco lovers may note with pleasure, however, that the cartoon in question appeared in 1984, and in the decades since then, the national and international passion for Art Deco has only grown. Today, Art Deco New York survives and flourishes. 90 years after Art Deco's introduction to the city, its great monuments have evolved from brash modern upstarts to historic landmarks. Many have been lovingly restored, from the world-famous spire of the Chrysler Building to the lobbies of Bronx apartment buildings, and they're waiting impatiently for you to visit and discover their many charms. I developed many of the itineraries in this guidebook, beginning in 1982 as programs for the Art Deco Society of New York. The first 11 are in Manhattan, arranged roughly from south to north, and each is meant to be walked. The sites in the other boroughs, too widely scattered to be organized as walking tours, are simply grouped by neighborhood and best visited by car, bus, or subway. Each building is numbered to indicate both itself and its itinerary. For example, the first building in the first itinerary is 1.1. Actually, since that entry has 2 buildings, it's numbered 1.1A. See references will always use that numbering system. In a few instances of very tall skyscrapers, the entry is split in 2. For example, the Empire State Building, seen first from afar and later from closer up. So we're looking at 3.3 and 3.6. I have to show you guys this photo. Here we go. So afar and closer. Directions rely on the convention that in Manhattan, which does not lie on a true north-south axis, north means uptown, south means downtown, east toward the East River, and west is toward the Hudson River. The itineraries are designed to be easy to follow, but tours can sometimes feel like scavenger hunts. Feel free to break away from any itinerary if you see something interesting, to stop for coffee, or just to look around. Please note that this is a guidebook, organized into itineraries and not an exhaustive survey of every Art Deco building in the city. The Art Deco Society has undertaken an Art Deco registry and may one day have a complete list, but it will include hundreds, if not thousands, of buildings. If your favorite Art Deco building in Manhattan hasn't made it into this guidebook, it's most likely beyond the reach of any of the walking tour itineraries. Among my own favorites that couldn't be included, the 369th Regiment Armory on Fifth Avenue in Harlem, and the Salvation Army headquarters on West 14th Street, as well as several of Ralph Walker's telephone company buildings. The itineraries for the boroughs outside Manhattan include a dozen or so of the most interesting buildings, but much has had to be omitted. The 11 WPA-era pools and play centers are wonderful structures, and the single examples in the Bronx, Queens, and Staten Island are included. Blur the remaining 8, divided between Brooklyn and Manhattan, are not for reasons for space. Please also note that with the exception of government-owned buildings, all the sites in this tour are private property. Most hotels and some office buildings normally allow visitors to enter at least the lobbies, but inclusion in this book does not of itself grant permission to enter any building. Many of the buildings in this guide are either individually designated New York City landmarks or included within a designated New York City Historic District, and so noted in the text as follows. Each entry for an individually designated landmark is marked with an asterisk, exclusively an interior landmark with 3 asterisks. Buildings located within historic districts are marked HD. A few or are both individual landmarks and within historic districts and marked asterisk HD. Several of the buildings, while not local landmarks are included within local historic districts, are nevertheless listed in the National Register of Historic Places or included within National Register Historic Districts. These are marked NR or NRHD, but only if they are not also landmarks. All landmarks in historical districts, whether locally designated or listed in the National Register, have official research reports available online. Itinerary number 1, from Bowling Green to Wall Street. Downtown Deco includes mid-range office buildings rising from Manhattan's bedrock. Unrivaled skyscraper designs include Ralph Walker's Gothic modern fantasy of the Irving Trust Tower. 1.3. And the Art Deco encrusted city service headquarters. 1.6. A new insurance district on John Street created opportunities for architects better represented in other parts of town. Eli Jacques Kohn, 1.8 and 1.11. Better known in the Garment Street Center, Shreve, Lamb and Harmon, 1.9. Architects of the Empire State Building, and Louis Allen Abramson, 1.7. Designer of automats. Okay, automat, I know what that is because I used to go through all the old books that belonged to my father and his sisters and brothers, and they had all these old books, and of course they were born in the 60s, so they had books. Obviously in the 60s they're going to have books from like the 40s and 50s too, right? Like I remember seeing a children's book called My Trip to the Automat or something, and it was like an illustrated children's book. It was so cool because I never heard of that. I mean, they kind of exist now, right? The concept, like you go and you pay money for like a pre-made dish inside of glass, like we have those everywhere, but this was like brand new, but the way it is quite different. Like I guess we have kiosks and things like that where you can buy food, but it was such a new concept. I don't know when it came out. I'm thinking between the 30s and 50s, I don't know, but anyways, it was the first time the child goes to an automat and you go in and the food is all being made in the back fresh, and they put it in, you know, behind a glass, and you just pay, and then it gets the food out. So I guess it's kind of like a street food vending machine, but it was in the style of a restaurant. So all the walls are lined with these dishes, I guess, and they had tables and chairs in the center, so you can pay for your food, and then take it and eat it there. I mean, I guess a lot of our places now have this kind of concept, but back then, I think they only had restaurants. There was no such thing as like ready-made food and you just like pay for it. And I guess technology was new as well, right? Like just being able to put coinage or coins inside of a machine and and it opens the door. I think that was a completely new concept. So yeah, that's what an automat is, and that the only reason why I know what it is because I remember that childhood book that belonged to my dad and his siblings. Okay, so automats. So I guess Louis Allen Abramson designed automats. He also designed hospitals and synagogues tucked in and in and around the sides of the financial district. Smaller but equally stylish Deco survivors include a pair of buildings on West Street by Starrett and Van Vleck, 1.1. Let's see. How beautiful is that? It's not gorgeous? Okay, for the sake of automats, if you guys haven't seen like the automat, like the first thing I want to show you online. Let's see. Oh, that is so cool. Look at, you could tell it looked really Art Deco. Look at the way it looks. That is so cool, right? I mean, we have this kind of concept now, right? They're not exactly like that, but very similar. But I guess this concept of being able to pay for your food behind glass and it's pre-made and ready was such a cool modern concept for the time. Gorgeous. Is that fascinating? Oh my god, it's so cool. The sign above says sandwiches. The walk begins at the steps of the former US Custom House facing onto Bowling Green at the foot of Broadway. Visitors approaching New York City across the harbor, whether on million-dollar ocean liners on the Staten Island ferry, can still find themselves mesmerized by the fairy tale skyline of downtown Manhattan. That view has changed over the decades, but a careful observer can still pick out the romantic spires of an earlier age that made the skyline the symbol of New York, the world's first modern metropolis, And of those spires, the most romantic of all are the great Art Deco towers. Unlike Midtown Manhattan, which grew its original skyline in the 1920s just as Deco was coming into fashion, downtown had already sprouted some of the country's very first skyscrapers back in the late 19th century, leaving fewer plots available for post-World War I redevelopment. But towering here and there above the narrow streets bequeathed to the city by the 17th century Dutch colony of New Amsterdam are some of the country's finest zigzag and streamlined delights, glittering pinnacles of Wall Street prosperity, monuments to the high-flying corporations of 1920s banking, oil, and telecommunications. So we're given a map. Surprisingly, quite a few of the largest towers rose into the sky in the months following the great stock market crash of 1929. I didn't even look. The Wall Street Journal in June 1930 reported that probably at no previous time in Wall Street history has Lower Manhattan been involved in more important and extensive real estate and building operations than have recently been consummated or are currently underway or planned. Of the buildings visited on this walk, the Bank of the Manhattan Company, 1.5, let's see, Irving Trust Company at 1.3, we've seen it already. Number 29 Broadway, 1.2. Number 21 West Street, 1.1B. This one right here. The adjoining Downtown Athletic Club. Oh, they're both in that same photo. They're together. Adjoining buildings. Numbers 90 and 116 John Street. 110 and 1.7. 1.10 and 1.7. Okay, so this is 90 John Street. Springsteen and Goldhammer, 1930. And 1.7. And then this is 116 John Street, Louis Allen Abramson, 1930 to 31. In the insurance district, and perhaps half a dozen more major towers date from 1930, as do the initial plans of number 70 Pine Street. I think we've seen number 70 Pine Street, it was 1.6. This one. And at least as of June in that year,